Good evening. Hope you can hear me and that I'm coming through live onto the Organic Education Facebook page. Hello. I'll just give it a minute to see if anyone is tuning in live. It's a really busy time of year, isn't it, this run up to Christmas? So I wasn't really sure whether anyone would be available to listen in tonight. But I wanted to squeeze the last live of the year in really before Christmas week. So we'll see if anyone joins me. And if not, this live will be there on the page for people to watch back on replay. And of course, you can always put your questions into the chat on the page and I will try and answer them in due course. But it's nice if somebody's here live so that I'm not speaking out into the ether. It was a bit weird doing lives. Anyway, good evening. My name is Alice Kimasia, for those of you that are new to the page or have just found the page. My husband, Krish, and I have been unschooling our 4 sons and ourselves for about 12 years now. It feels like longer because my eldest son is 20 now, and in his school career, he only did just over 3 years of school in this country. And his brother's even less than that. The younger 2 have never been to school. So the topic of tonight's live is living, learning, growing without schooling. I think that when you're home educating and you're on this alternative path, it's easy to forget actually how different and radical it is to people who are just discovering home education, finding that there are alternative pathways to school. It's easy for those who've been on the way a while to forget how that feels and what it's like jumping off that bandwagon and the feeling of responsibility and overwhelm. So living, learning, growing without schooling, that's the subject of tonight's Q&A. And I thought I'd come on and offer a Q&A session to people who might just have questions that they want to throw at me. But that's not so easily done if there's nobody listening live. So perhaps you'd like to put questions in the chat even afterwards, and I'll try and turn my attention to them. But I do have some questions that people have sent me leading up to this live so that they can catch it back on replay. So I will be addressing those questions, even if there's nobody there posing questions live. Oh, but somebody's tuned in there. Hello. Do say hi in the chat because it's nice to know who I'm speaking to. I get a little icon pop up so I can see if anyone's listening. A couple of people have tuned in. That's great. Hello, welcome. I'm Alice, and I was just saying it's a Q&A tonight, living, learning, growing without schooling. So I'm hoping if you are tuning in, you've got some questions for me, and do put them in the chat and I will do my best to answer them. Hi, Deborah. Thank you. Nice to know I can be seen and heard out there. Thank you. Hello, welcome. And I was just saying I've got some questions that people have sent in ahead. So I'll kick off with those, and do put questions in the chat if you've got any about home education, living, learning, growing without schooling. So a while ago, somebody asked me a question that I haven't really covered in my other monthly lives this year. And it was about keeping records of work and how you keep records of the things that you do. So I thought I'd start with that question tonight. And if people are listening in or have their own advice on this subject, do put it in the chat to benefit the whole community. But what I do is take lots of photographs. And that's so easy now, isn't it, when we've got our phones often in our pockets and handy. And so a lot of my evidence of learning is collected photographically. And there's some really good apps now. Those of you who are listening who are younger than me will probably have all sorts of good ideas for various apps that you can use. One I did use for a while was called Evernote. And that was a really handy tool because you can take pictures and then you can put a little note about it, and then you can save them in different folders. So I used to have a folder for each of my sons on Evernote, and also some general files, like I think we had one for nature and one for art, and different kind of subject headings too that I would pop photos into with a little note about what we've done. But actually I'm not that great with my phone and technology, so for me it kind of became just photographs that I would then put into my computer, and I've got files on my computer which are sorted by term. And it's great actually, because what I find is sometimes when we're home educating, we can get this feeling that we haven't really done very much. We worry, oh, have we done enough? Doesn't feel like we've been doing very much recently. And yet when I look back at the end of a month or at the end of a term on my photo records, it's always just amazing to see all the things that we have done and all the things that we've explored. And that's only ever a snapshot of the bigger picture of our home education. So what I do is compile these termly folders. So then I have a year with all the pictures of things we've done. And recently I've started getting those printed off actually into those lovely kind of books you can order from Snapfish and places when they've got a good discount on, and you can get a good deal on photo books. I'll print them off, and then so I've got the books of the year of our home education, and they're lovely pictorial records, and they remind us of all the amazing experiences and things that we've done. And then what I also have is a file for each of my children into which I pop any kind of written work that they've done, any drawings, kind of like tickets from events that we might go to. It's almost like a scrapbook of all their different stuff. And I've been more organized recently and made sure that we're dating those to kind of keep a record of work. So that's what I do. That's my kind of record keeping. And as I say, if you've got other ideas of ways that you keep records of your children's work, please do pop them into the chat to help others, especially apps and things that you found good for record keeping. There was some concern raised recently about having to evidence work for the authorities. And so I have spoken to my 9-year-old Zephan about this, and he actually is quite diligent about putting the date on things, and has been a bit more mindful about having kind of project folders into which he puts his own work and organizes his own work. At the moment, he's got a project on the go, designing a world in Minecraft with a friend. But as part of that work, he's doing a lot of drawing and character design with information about the characters and sort of top trump style scores for different characteristics and things. And so all these notes are going into a special folder about that particular project. And so giving your children ownership as well over the way that they want to record their work, and how they might want to document their own learning is quite an interesting one. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear other people's thoughts on that. Somebody else asked me, how do you find out about all the awesome opportunities that people seem to think that I do with my boys? And I think that's because that question came from Holly in response to something that I put on Instagram the other day about some steel pan drumming that we were doing. And we'd had this little home education group sessions with a local guy who teaches steel pan drumming. It was really fun. And so Holly asked me, well, how do you find all these awesome opportunities? Do you approach people and sort of hook it up yourself? So Yeah, often I do. And the great thing I find about being a home educator and an unschooling parent is that you develop these special antennae that go up for opportunity. And I think you just become more open and aware to things that are going on in your local community and in your locality. And so I have developed and honed this skill. So I do always have my eyes and ears open. And in particular, I find that things draw my attention which are linked and relevant to the things that we are interested in as a family at a particular time, or to particular projects and interests that my children have. So an example is recently Zephyr, my youngest, was very interested in myths and in mythical creatures and mythical beasts. And so I just noticed opportunities around that, even linked to Lego, because there's this new Lego Mythica range, and we saw that at Legoland, and things just kind of line up. But there was a lovely show that came to our local theatre around the same time, which was called Mythical Beasts. And I had a look at it because I thought, oh, yes, that aligns with Zephyr's interest. And things just kind of jump out at you. And I think you just become more open to noticing all these opportunities. Another one of Zephyr's at the moment is dinosaurs. And I do just kind of notice and see things that are relevant to his interest in prehistory. And not just his interests, but kind of like our interests as a family. So one of my particular interests and one of my desires for the boys' education is that, we explore different cultures, and we're very fortunate to live in such a diverse city here. And so the steel pan drumming came from being part of City of Culture this year. And there were these try it sessions advertised through City of Culture where you can just try a new skill. So again, my antenna, what could we try? What opportunities are on here? And often now I see these things come up through social media as well. You follow particular providers like local theatres and things that might have interesting opportunities. And I saw the steel pan drumming come up as a try it session for the public. And so I said to Zephyr, well, let's go along and have a go. And he was a little bit resistant at first, but he was open to going and having a go, and we did. And the guy we met there was lovely, and it turned out then we have a conversation. And so often a point of connection is made through an encounter like that. And he then offered us some home ed sessions as part of City of Culture. So that was a free opportunity that then presented itself. So often I find that by putting ourselves out there as well, and by going out into the community and taking opportunities and encountering people, you can make these connections and forge these opportunities, not just for our family, but for other local home educators too. I'm thinking of another example some years ago where our boys were at a canal side fair. It was a kind of local community thing with different stalls and different stall holders. And there was a lovely stall there with a group of local wood carvers. And mostly they were kind of older people. And we got chatting to the guy on the stall. And it turned out that he lived just up the road from us. And he had a kind of wood carving workshop where he ran sessions in his kind of garage. And so, again, we took the opportunity to have a conversation, and we facilitated a little group of home ed kids to go up there and do some wood carving with him. And it turned out he was a former head teacher, and he really enjoyed passing on this skill to some interested young people. And seeing their enthusiasm for it. And so that developed into quite a long-standing opportunity to get involved with some wood carving for our boys. But again, it was through a chance encounter just from being out there in the community. And that's been difficult, hasn't it, through lockdown? And I think many of us who home educate, it has been frustrating not to be able to be out and taking advantage of those local opportunities to meet people and to forge these kind of opportunities for our children. So it's been really nice to be able to do the steel pan drumming this month, and to be out there and meeting people again when we can. That's a good way to do it. So I hope that speaks to your question, Holly, that you asked me on Instagram. That kind of plays into another question that Charlene asked me, which was, how do you find local groups and outdoor activities and opportunities for socializing? And that's a really good question, because when you start home educating, even if you've been home educating for a while, or post-lockdown, you're looking to kind of get out there again and forge some new connections. The best way nowadays to find local groups is usually through social media. You'll find that you can find local home education groups, usually in your city or town, and probably also for your county. So if you put in your town or city name and home education, you'll probably get a group come up, or your county name and home education. So I'm part of Home Education Warwickshire, I follow on social media, Home Education Coventry, which is my city. And so I think there's one for West Midlands as well. And that way you'll get to hear about the wonderful network of home education and what's going on in your local area. And it really is like jumping into an amazing subculture, which you don't really know exists until you jump into it. And then you find actually there's so much going on, and you can be so busy that you don't even have enough time at home sometimes, because there's such a lot going on. And you'll find on there, there'll probably be some kind of social groups where people are just meeting up to kind of get to know each other and forge friendships and meet. You'll probably find plenty of outdoor activities, maybe forest schools and things like that. I've also found through my local wildlife trust some good outdoor opportunities, which the boys have enjoyed over the years. And we go to a weekly nature group at our local wildlife trust, which is good and free for outdoor activities. And lots of other opportunities. As your children get older, you might find on there some home educators getting together to have various little study groups for certain things, or all kinds of other things like sewing groups, or different musical groups or sports things. We have a local tennis home ed group going on here. So there's all kinds of things. And also, as you get to meet more home educators in your locality and connect with people, then they'll tell you about things too, and you'll hear about different opportunities from people around you. So, there really is a great network there with lots of information available. And the other thing you can do, of course, as a member of the community, is to create opportunities and then put them out there to offer to other folks too. So you can gather a group of like-minded friends to come and have a group activity with you. So, it can be very proactive as well. So over the years, there's a number of things that we've done and we've joined with others to do. A little science group we've got with some friends at the moment, and a nature walking group. And we had a tech club at one point, which was super fun and very chaotic, with lots of inventing and tinkering with technology, particularly when my eldest son Elias was at home, because that was a great passion of his. And it's wonderful because you can, really orientate it around your own children's interest, and really to make that work. I think it has to work for you and for your family. But often you'll find like-minded friends are very happy to get together and be part of something. So I hope that is some useful inspiration for Charlene. But if you're listening, Charlene, do pop in the chat if what I'm saying throws up other questions, or if you've got advice and insight for others, please do contribute it. Someone else asked me, do you have tutors? And that's an interesting question, because when you're speaking to home educators, as many different home educators as you speak to, that is how many different impressions of home education you will get. Because the lovely thing is, you can tailor make an education that suits you and your family and your children. So actually, you know, your home education doesn't need to look anything like mine. That's the beauty of it. But it can also be a bit frustrating, because it's kind of nice, isn't it, to kind of look at what someone else is doing and think, oh, I could do that. But the things I'm suggesting won't always work exactly replicated in your situation. So some home educators will use tutors, and it depends. It depends on what it is you're wanting to learn, what your child's wanting to learn. And it might also depend on your budget, because, again, you know, there'll be home educators who happily spend a lot of money on tutors, and others who don't have the means to do that. And again, there's so many different approaches. It's certainly not a one size fits all. We haven't used a lot of tutors really over the years. The one thing that I did do when the boys were younger, is this was partly because we'd been living abroad when they were very small. And so they'd had this amazing immersive experience of learning a foreign language when they were very young. And I really, really wanted, when I came back to the UK, for that to continue. And so the one tutor that I did have when they were younger was a lady who would come in and do language with them, a native speaker. And actually, it was an informal arrangement I made with a friend, and she would come and do Mandarin with the boys, and it was really wonderful. In fact, we had a few people do Mandarin over the years, but it was interesting, because really that was my vision, really, something that I really desired for the boys. And there was a lesson in it for me, because as they got a little bit older, they spoke to me and they said, Mum, you know, it's not really our thing, and we enjoy it, it's quite fun, but we're not really, you know, loving it. It's not really our particular thing that we want to do. And one of my sons, his real passion was for music and for playing guitar. And so there was a point where I suddenly realized, a bit slow to learn me always, that actually I'd be better to put the money I was spending on languages into his music. And so he did then have music tuition, but not till he was older, and he had done quite a lot of self-learning up until that point. And he does still have guitar lessons with the tutor that we engaged. So that was something that we invested in. Do you have tutors? I'm trying to think what else we've used over the years. A lot of the boys' learning has been self-directed, using resources on the internet, documentaries, informal encounters with people, other home educating parents, people in the community who would willingly give of their time. And as I said earlier, we're really keen to share their skills with interested youngsters. It's felt often over the years like within our community, we've given to the community, and then at times we've also benefited from other people giving. Our son Noah, who some of you might have seen the live with him a few months ago, he's my great sports lover, and his great passion is tennis. And so Noah has had been part of a tennis club and had tennis tuition in more recent years, because that was something that he really wanted to invest in. And also, as the boys have moved into their GCSE years, Noah has had a tutor for English, and he's enjoyed being part of a kind of small tutorial group with this particular local tutor who's wonderful. And very reasonable, actually. We've made an arrangement with her and a few others to have that group, and it's been very beneficial to Noah. And again, thinking of GCSE, he did have some art art tuition as well to help support him through GCSE. So it depends. And once you get up to GCSE level, of course, there are people taking very different approaches to exam preparation. There are students who self-study GCSE, some using the textbook, working through a textbook, some using online resources, online tutor groups, and just saw a question come in there. It threw off my train of thought, but that's good. Hello, Carly. Thank you for your question. Yeah, and others having kind of like small group tuition for exam preparation. So again, there's a whole different range of opportunities, and it depends very much too on your child and their particular preferred learning style. So yeah, I think the lesson I learned over the years is to respond to your child's need, not to what you think they need. And so that was quite a big and important lesson that took me some time to learn, actually. So Carly says, did you find home education more challenging during the lockdowns? Yes. I think everyone would say that. Yes, home education during the lockdowns was hard. And it was quite interesting, actually, because people would say to me, people I know whose children are in school, obviously were suddenly in a situation where the schools were closed. But people would sort of say to us, oh, of course, things haven't changed for you. And it was funny, really, because they had hugely. And it was interesting to think that people's perceptions of home education is that you're very much kind of stuck at home, like during a lockdown, but we're not. And one of the things that inspired me early in my home education journey was a book called Making the Whole World Your Child's Classroom. And it really was, for me, always my vision with the boys' home ed was to expand their world, right, and to make their classroom bigger. And that's remained a vision for me, is that I want them to have a world that's bigger than the classroom. And I think it was one of our main impetuses, really, when we started home educating, was that we'd come back from living overseas and from having this huge experience as a family. And so when they went into their little Staffordshire classrooms, it felt like their world got smaller. And I think that was one of the key reasons, actually, that I started to home educate, was because I wanted to keep their world big and to keep their walls expanded. And so, yeah, in lockdown, it was hard to be at home and to have our groups stop and the usual activities that we're engaged in during the week stop and our rhythm of the week shut down. Which was why, if you were following me on social media last year, you'll have known I was quite engaged with the Lights On community. And that was a real lifeline to me during lockdown, actually, to find that community and to throw ourselves into that connection with people online. And we were engaged in quite a lot of learning challenges as a community. And it was a great point of connection for us as a family. But it was different. And we had to find, as everybody did, new ways of engaging in learning. And it was amazing, wasn't it, to see how many different innovative things sprung up in the online space to help parents and children through that time, whether your children were in school or normally home educated. And I think missing friends and family, that was hard for everybody. So yeah, definitely more challenging during the lockdowns. And if you started home educating during the lockdowns or because of the lockdowns, maybe you realised that there were different possibilities with your children out of school, then you've got great things to come, because as things open up again, increasingly, hopefully, as we move forward, you'll find that there's a lot more in the home ed world to discover that hasn't been fully functioning during lockdown. So it's really a good thing. There's lots of things normally going on. Thank you, Jackie. Nice to have you here. Thanks for tuning in. Jackie asks, have any of your children struggled to know what they want to learn about? That's a really good question, because in our family, we tend to I've spoken on these lives before about how I don't use a curriculum. We have very emergent learning and tend to follow the kind of learning opportunities that life presents to us and that the children are interested in, the questions that they ask, the conversations that they initiate, and the kind of learning pathways that leads us down. And so that's a good question. Have any of your children struggled to know what they want to learn about? At times, yes. I have 4 boys and they are all really, really different. And some of them, particularly my eldest and youngest, are very much, how to put it? They're very self-driven. So they'll get up in the morning with very clear ideas generally about what they want to do and what they want to learn about, and we'll set out and they've got lots of ideas. And even with Zephan now, he's 9, and I will say at points where there's perhaps a bit of a lull and we're thinking, what should we do next? And I'll say, well, Zephan, look, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. And he'll often come up with the 4th thing. Actually, Mum, I want to do this. And it's something equally as valuable and interesting. And so I'll say, right, great, come on then, let's get on with that. And I think my second son found it sometimes more difficult to know what he wanted to do. He's perhaps less that way inclined. And sometimes I feel like his brother tended to kind of drive things forward. When my eldest son went to school when he was 14, we missed him in the family dynamic, because I found that often he was kind of driving our learning in good ways, but by the way that he was and by the things that he would initiate and the questions that he would ask, it gave us like it was like a constant fountain of ideas coming. And it was interesting when that was gone. When he went into school, the dynamic kind of changed. And it meant that my second and third sons had to kind of step up and fill that gap a little bit and drive things a little bit more. And I don't think they are as naturally inclined to that way. But given the opportunity, there are things that they want to learn about. And sometimes it might be that I would put an idea in and we'd go with that for a while and see where it took us. Sometimes I might pick something topical just to, kick off a conversation and kick off a line of inquiry and then see where it took us. So it's quite a dynamic thing with different players in the mix. And often things bounce off one another. So, we might start off with one idea and then someone else throws something else in. And it's quite a dynamic thing. And sometimes when things are really, there's not really much appearing or much that's evident in terms of where we might go next, then you need a new stimulus, and that's when we might use a kind of learning carousel where we're exploring new things, or we might look at a documentary, or, just go out to, when you can. See, this was the kind of thing that was difficult in lockdown. Go out to a gallery or something, or a local place of interest, and then, see what sparks and what catches their attention. And, sometimes it might just be a question that they ask, or a comment that they make, and you go with it. And there can be lots of things that spark our kind of learning journeys. So, I think it does depend on the child, and also us as well, having curiosity about things and a desire to find out about new things, and to sort of be on that learning adventure together. Because, even for ourselves, especially during the last few years, it can be hard, can't it? We can all get a little bit weary and, lose our spark. And so I think that that's important too, for us to be kind of curious about things and wanting to learn new things as well, and then sort of leading by example. So I hope that that answers that question somewhat, Jackie. But if you've got other things to add, please do put it in the chat for others as well. Someone asked me, do you find the costs of home ed more than traditional schooling? And I think I did speak a little bit to that earlier when I was talking about tutors, because, you know, home ed could be really expensive, right? Because you could do absolutely everything. You could travel the world and do amazing things, and go to all sorts of events and theatre, and you know, if you had the means, could look like that. But equally, you know, people home educate on a shoestring, and it really doesn't have to cost the earth, because there are also lots of opportunities that we can find local to us and within our communities, which are free and valuable. And now we have so many online resources as well to access, and wonderful libraries. And so, you know, it really can depend upon your budget and what you want to spend money on and what you don't. And there, I remember when we used to find all sorts of money saving ways to do things, like the Tesco Club Card vouchers used to be really good. I don't think they're as good anymore, but we used to get a lot of days out and things on Tesco Club Card. And a really good idea is to get your kids a Blue Peter badge. If you haven't done that, you're missing a trick, because you can send in, if you look on the Blue Peter website, your kids can apply for a Blue Peter badge. And they have to do something, like, it's quite a fun project to do something for Blue Peter. It can be like an artwork, or something in the community, or a letter. It's all kinds of possibilities. And you send in to Blue Peter about it, and they'll give you a Blue Peter badge and a card. And the card lasts until the child is 16. And it gets you free into loads of places. It's really, really good, worth having. So all our boys have had a Blue Peter badge over the years, although sadly our third son, Noah, is going to be 16, unbelievably, next month. So we'll only have one boy who's still able to use Blue Peter badge. But they're really good. Yeah, Victoria says we love using our Blue Peter badges. Absolutely, they're great. And I remember having a Blue Peter badge when I was a kid. So, you know, you can find all these kind of deals and things if you're savvy. And there are even some online home ed groups where you can find discounts for things, and you know, discounted rates. And it's always worth asking. Even we have these wonderful Christmas lectures that our local university do, which are ticketed at this time of year. And as a home educator, if you ask for home educator rate, they'll give you free tickets. And there's lots of things like that. You know, we went to visit, I think it was Bletchley Park sometime this year, and they give you, with your ticket that you've paid for, which isn't cheap, but then you've got a whole year pass to go back. And there are places like that too, aren't there, where you get return visit for free for a year. And actually, as a home educator, that's really valuable, because we do have time to go back and to revisit places. And actually revisiting places that our children love and value can be a really great thing, and can really mine kind of depths of learning by returning to familiar places. So that can also be a really good tip. Yeah, Carl is saying I totally forgot about the Blue Peter badge. It's really good, right? We actually have a brilliant story, because our sons were on Blue Peter when our second son Joe was about 7. He had Blue Peter come and film with him for the day, and it was really exciting and amazing, but very, very tedious how long it took to film like a 5-minute section for Blue Peter. And they were in our house all day filming this section. I said to Joe at the end of the day, so do you fancy television presenting, Joe? And he was like, no, it's so tiring, it takes so long. But it was a really fun experience. So he got his Blue Peter badge for actually presenting a make on Blue Peter, which was exciting. And my mum got to star alongside him, because she was his magically appearing grandma with her sewing machine. So that was a really cool experience. So yeah, you can spend a lot of money, you can spend very little money. I think that the expensive time in home education comes when you get to exams, and it's a bit of a bugbear for me, because I have this strong conviction that actually home educated children ought to have equal free access to exams. That seems to me to be an equal opportunities issue. And it is frustrating that sitting exams as an external candidate, it can be quite costly. Of course, you don't have to do as many exams as children would be sitting in school. And so it's certainly worth working backwards. So if you look at maybe what your child might want to do as a college course, let's say I'm looking with Noah at the moment at the BTEC Extended Diploma in Sport next year at college. And if we look at that and we see what entrance requirements he needs for that, it's usually for those sorts of courses like 4 or 5 GCSEs. And you can work backwards. So it's good to look ahead and then think, what do we actually need in order to get ourselves to the next stage? And you might find that you don't need to do as many GCSEs as kids in school are doing. Then, of course, if you use tutors for exam preparation, that will be another cost. So it depends on the approach you take. It's a difficult question to answer. It depends on you and your needs as a family. It depends on the child. Yeah, but the exams is a bit of a bugbear. I heard recently, and this was a really encouraging thing, that one of our local colleges is offering some free online maths and English preparation for GCSE students who are taking the exam this summer, including the exam fee, like sitting the exam at the end of that course. So there are, I think, increasing opportunities for kids to access, particularly maths and English at GCSE. But that to me has been something of a frustration when we've got to that stage of our home ed. Of course, 2 of my sons opted to go into school at that stage of their education to do their GCSEs. And one of the reasons for that was to do with costs, which is disappointing, actually, when it comes to it. And for one of them, it was a good thing, and it was a positive experience. For the other one, it was difficult, and with hindsight, I wish we could have tackled it differently. But you do what you make the decisions you make at the time. But cost was an issue, and so at exam time, that's something to consider. But it's not impossible, and people do it. People budget for it over some years. So I think it's something to be aware of. But certainly when your kids are younger, I think many of us home ed on a shoestring, and it's very possible. And yeah, keeping that classroom big and that worldwide, to me was valuable, and was worth the years that we spent outside of the classroom. So yeah, I hope that speaks to that question a bit about costs. But again, as many home educators as you speak to will probably answer you differently, and their home ed will look different, because it is very personal, which is the great thing about it, is you can essentially tailor make an education for your child, for your family, which is just a privilege and a wonderful thing, really. So yeah, I'm just looking down my list of the questions that I got ahead of time, and I think that was all the ones that came in ahead of time. So I don't know if any of you listening in have got more questions. If so, please put them in the chat, because otherwise, I don't know. I think that's all the ones that I had. I'm trying to think if there's any more that people often ask me when I'm just talking about home ed. Have you as joint parents always agreed on the route you take? That is a good question, Jackie. Thank you. Yes, Krish and I, we have actually been very united on the home education front, which is really interesting thinking about it. My husband's a teacher. He teaches maths in secondary schools. This year, he has started to teach in an alternative provision for children that are anxious and a school refusing, which is really a lovely opportunity for him to bring his unschooling experience together with his teaching hat. And he's really enjoying that. It's a very small setting. And because he's been teaching all these years, I think he's been a great champion of our home education. And sometimes when I've had really difficult days with the boys, or just days where I've just felt like, I'm thinking particularly when they were younger and it just felt crazy. And like I'd get to the end of the day and think, man, what have they actually done today? What have they actually learned? And then he'd come home from school and the boys would tell him and we'd be talking about it and he'd say, oh, you've done loads. And he would always be really encouraging in that. Like he'd make me feel like we'd done lots. And I think that when you're with your children all day, it's easy. Sometimes you kind of think, oh gosh, if they were in school, they would have done loads. I think we have that in our minds. And he would just remind me that actually that's not true, that a lot of time at school is spent managing behaviour and, kind of organising children. And actually he would remind me that if we'd had like even a short session of one-to-one, a good conversation and a bit of maths one-to-one or something, that actually that was a lot. And so, yeah, his presence and experience coming home at the end of the day as a teacher was always really affirming and encouraging to me. And I think, yeah, he's always just kind of enthused and supported what we've been doing at home. And he's been great as a kind of maths and STEM minded person, which is completely different to me. We kind of complement each other quite well. So I think I've been really fortunate in that, because I know that there are families where there's disagreement about home education, and perhaps one parent is more on board than the other, and it can be difficult. I think if you can find agreement, that's just a really positive thing to encourage each other. And I think, yeah, often when there is disagreement, it probably is born out of worry and out of fear and out of uncertainty about where the path's leading. And so the more that you can find out and the more people you can talk to as co-parents, so that you can both kind of embrace it, then I think that would be really beneficial. And if you're a solo parent, the challenges are different, right? Because you're kind of managing it on your own. And so then I think finding community with other parents and other home educators, whether that's people in your locality or online, where you can connect and find encouragement. I think that's really important, because vision is important, right? Remembering why you've set out on this path, and holding that vision of actually what you want your children's educational path to look like. What you want your family's learning adventure to look like, and holding on to that, reminding yourself why you're on that pathway. That can be really helpful and motivating, because things are tough sometimes. And I also tell myself, it's tough if our kids are in school as well. It's just a different tough. Like sometimes we think, oh, if they were in school, it would be like this, but it isn't. It's tough in different ways, and there'll be different challenges. And that's true whichever path we take in life. I know that when my second son was in school for his GCSEs, there were times where he was so anxious, and that was difficult. So yeah, I think having that vision and reminding yourself of why you're doing it and what you're wanting to achieve, and ultimately what you want, where you want your children to get to, that can just be really important in helping you to keep going and to feel positive about it. I felt like I waffled there, Jackie. Did that kind of answer your question? Has anyone got another question? We've got a bit of time left before my hour's up. This year, I challenged myself this year to come onto my page and do a monthly live. And I can't believe this is the 12th one and we've got to December. And I feel like a really sense of achievement that we've done that. And I hope these talks have been helpful to you and encouraged you in your home educating. Deborah's asking, thank you. As one's children get to GCSE years, have you had to encourage your children to hone in and improve their English and math skills? Yeah, that's a really good question, Deborah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just at the point where we are working through GCSEs with my third son, Noah. He would be in year 11 if he was in school this year. He'll be 16 in January. And the older two, as I said, chose to go into school for GCSE, and Noah has chosen to continue to study outside of school. So this has been a new challenge, and it has required them to kind of step up. I've said on this page before and on these lives that really we did very little formal maths and English with the boys when they were younger. And I know, like, people often look at me incredulously, like it's hard to believe it, but it's true. Krish, as I said, is a maths teacher, and he was very keen that the boys spend a lot of time playing and utilising maths in their real life experience, through learning about money, banking, working out good deals on things, cooking, baking, measuring, through Lego and actual tangible activities. And he often said to me that he felt like there was such an emphasis on formal mathematics in primary school, and then this kind of coasting through Key Stage 3 often, and then GCSE. So the boys did have a very kind of informal play-based education up until about 14. And then, yeah, as we began to think about qualifications and GCSE, that's quite an interesting time, because the sort of need to get those qualifications gave them a sort of focus and a why about doing those things. So, for example, Noah wants to go and do this sports course at college next year, and he needs maths and English. And if he doesn't pass it this year, it's not the end of the world, right? But he'll have to redo it at college because that's one of their criteria. And so that kind of gives him a why. And actually, Noah's somebody who's really he's got quite a strong sense of intrinsic motivation. Joe, his brother, was kind of more reluctant and didn't get those GCSEs first time round and had to resit them and so on. But there's a kind of as they get older, this kind of understanding that this is just something that's going to be useful to you in life going forward. So, they kind of want to get it. And for some of my boys, it's been really motivating, the kind of competitiveness of it. Like, I want to get it and do well at it. And for others of them, it's just been more of a necessity, a kind of hoop. Oh, I have to kind of jump through this hoop. But in all their cases, they have had to step up to, yes, as you say, kind of hone in and improve their maths and their kind of formal maths and English skills, Deborah, or at least their ability to do those things on the paper that enables them to get over that hurdle. And it's been fascinating that they have, even though they have that very informal kind of lead up and preparation to GCSE, they have stepped up, even with their very differing personalities and gifts. I just find it interesting. And with English particularly, what I found was that they all have had this amazing, rich vocabulary, and actually a brilliant way of being able to express themselves. They've got good skills in terms of communicating, in terms of arguing a point, putting over their opinion. Lots of opportunity to practice that in our family. And even in terms of negotiating with siblings, all of these things are actually communication skills, which lead well into more formal English. It's interesting. And Elias, who was very, in fact, a lot of them, all of them were very resistant writers as younger boys. Elias found actually that when it came to GCSE English, there's a kind of formula about it, about the way that you need to answer the questions. And so his kind of mathematical mind figured that out, like the way to kind of play the game, if you like, answer the questions. So he kind of worked out how to do well in his English paper. Yeah, so there's a way, isn't there? There's the actual English skills, and then there's actually learning to do exams, and that does require a kind of step up in the way that they're learning, and a why, like having a why do I need to do this? Yeah, I hope that helps. The encouraging thing is that they all did, right? One of them a little bit later, took a bit more time, but they all did. Yeah, and they were able to use laptops as well in the English exam, which is interesting to know, because handwriting my boys were very resistant to handwriting, but they were happier to type. So the fact that they could use a computer in the English exam was a helpful thing. And it was funny, because when I took the boys out of school, they were about 7 years old, and I said to Krish, by the time these boys leave school, we'll be talking to computers, and the computer will be doing the writing for us. And it kind of frustrated me that they were expected to do so much handwriting in school. And Elias particularly was losing playtimes and things because he just wasn't able to write enough or write neatly enough to kind of hit the required amount of writing. And he just hated it. It just put him right off. He hated writing. But I said the technology will be completely different by the time they leave school, and it is, right? It is. We're speaking to computers, and computers are writing things for us. And so there's so many practical English skills which actually we explore and encounter and encourage in home educating life, and just through all the different things that we do. And actually, I think it does stand our kids in really good stead. Good. I'm glad that helps. Has anyone got any more questions? Might have time for one more. I can't believe I've been talking for nearly an hour. It goes so quick. Thank you for joining me and listening. Has anyone got any more? No, everyone's very quiet. No. Well, thank you. Nice to do a Q&A. Do put any other things you think of in the chat, and I'll try and come into the group and answer them if I can. As I said, it was a bit of overcoming a personal fear by coming on and doing these lives every month through 2021. So thank you if you've journeyed with me, and I really hope that they've encouraged you. And the lives remain on my Facebook page if you want to rewatch or share with anyone. There was one on maths that Krish and I did earlier in the year. There's one on writing. There's one with my eldest son, Elias, talking about his journey as a young engineer. One with Noah, who's my sports fanatic, talking particularly about tackling exams without going to school. There was one last month I did with a young man named Ben Porter about his journey and how he became a young naturalist. And there's some of me talking about, I can't remember what, but there's a whole list. So do rewatch them and share them with anyone if you think that they'll be helpful. But it's been a pleasure. Thank you to you all. Thank you, Carly. I hope you have a lovely Christmas too, all of you. Stay safe and enjoy the holiday period. All right. Take care. Thanks for joining me.